given, that's how we live it. Don't be mad at the system, it's simply how we've existed. I hear a lot of people talking like they politicians and choose to be an accountant because it's safe in the business. Not because they want to do it, just because they heard it pays. And who the fuck wants to be poor knowing that's how we've been raised? Society is getting heavy, I can feel the weight. The pressure of success is like 100 million pounds of shit.
How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Gangi. Welcome to another episode of Tier Talk. Guys, we're going to be talking about entering the field of corrections a little later in life. Talking about maybe mid to late 30s, early to late 40s, maybe even the 50s. And I think this is going to be an interesting topic. It comes from Keepers of Chaos, Russ's group. He'll explain that in a little bit. And basically, someone had a question. Hey, Gange, what's your thoughts on entering corrections a little later in life? And I think there's a lot of pros. There could be some cons. But what I wanted to do is I wanted to have a little bit of a discussion here. So I got on Russ Hamilton, which we all know. And I also have someone new, Sergeant Steve Larsen. He also has a YouTube channel. He'll introduce himself shortly. And then this topic may be a little personal to him because he entered the field a little bit later. And then we'll go ahead and, it's not scripted. So we'll go ahead and see where the discussion goes. But I think it's going to be interesting because we have people with experience who have lived it or have worked with people who entered the field a little bit later in their life. So I think this is going to be very interesting dialogue. It's something we have not covered before. Russ Hamilton, how's everything going? How's Keepers of Chaos?
Everything is fantastic over here, Anthony. Keepers of Chaos, of course, we're going by leaps and bounds. I think we're up to around 4,200 or so right now. Looking forward, we're trying to pull off this thing where we're going to do a team event, Keepers of Chaos, in Lake Tahoe at the Tough Mudder. We're going to have some, team shirts made up, that kind of thing. Hoping we can branch that out into maybe doing a little other kind of correctional event there. We'll have to see how it goes. More on that when we have the dates solidified and stuff like that. So even if you don't want to, run and participate in the Tough Mudder itself, you're welcome to come out there, get the shirt, and help us maybe carry some water or something like that. There's still an entry fee for doing that, but it's going to be a great time, and I'm hoping that we can get a lot of more interest as time grows closer. Start training now, though. I know I am.
I'll be honest with you. The moment you did that, Russ, I literally almost put down the mic and was going to go downstairs to the gym. Literally. I mean, Hey, guys, and the other person we have is going to be great. He's going to be new to the channel. His name is Sergeant Beast Larsen. He has a YouTube channel as well. Teaches a lot of defensive tactics, obviously stuff that we need to know. But I'll have him introduce himself. Hey, Sarge, what's going on?
Great. How are you? I like how Russ did his intro. I'm going to stand like him and show off my forearms like he did. I'm working out, too. Just briefly, my career started in the Air Force. 4 years, then I got out, worked in a police department. I've been a part of 2 SWAT teams, was a police sniper, been teaching defensive tactics since 1999, 21 years. After retiring, got in private security, continued to teach fighting skills, and then I got a job down in Georgia Department of Corrections at Hayes State Prison, 4 years down there. Was a member of the CERT team, and then one of my favorite t-shirts here is a tactical squad. I was assistant commander. So 3 of my 4 years there in special ops. I've kind of been a special ops guy my whole life. Always working out, running, always on call, always carrying a beeper or something. That's how I've lived. I entered correction job at the age of 48. Very much opposite of you two.
I'll tell you something. That's why it's actually going to be a pretty interesting dialogue because we actually have 2 perspectives here. We have someone who entered in the profession a little bit later in life, and we have people that entered the profession a little bit early in life. So maybe they'll actually be kind of like a cross discussion, I think, because I may even talk about, maybe in order to understand the pros and cons of entering the profession late. Obviously, the comparison would be entering the profession early. So I'm sure a part of that's going to come into the discussion. Now, guys, if you haven't, the show Tier Talks to you, brave men and women that work in corrections. So please subscribe, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. The bell's going to notify you every time I post a video. We're going to go to our sponsor, and we come back. Let's talk about entering the profession a little later in life. Stand by.
I wanted to attend a university that had an intelligence program. I wanted to look at problems different. I wanted to increase my critical thinking abilities. AMU offered those avenues to expand. Obtaining your degree as an adult, you're actually paying yourself and investing in yourself. You can't put a dollar on it, it's priceless. It's something that can never be taken away from you.
American Military University. Learn from the leader.
Guys, inmate manipulation is a course that is highly needed. It's the process that's so slow moving and subtle that you don't realize it's happening. When inmates choose to manipulate, they manipulate our need to react. Situational awareness and insight is going to save your career. It's going to save you from doing foolish things. Listen to your gut. So the more insight we have, the more we can recognize what isn't so overt, and we can correct our behavior before we fall into a trap that we can't get out of. If you allow an inmate to pull you out of your prescribed role, you are opening up a door for a host of problems.
Inmate manipulation, the psychology behind inmate manipulation. Available now. Link in description. All right, and we are back. Okay, guys, so the big thing here, let me just explain why I got into the profession, is I just wanted to do my 25 and out. That's what invited me into corrections, right? So I'm not giving corrections a day more. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm going to be out when I'm 49, 50 because I started around 24 and 25. I believe the same as Russ. I know Russ stayed in the field a little bit longer. Russ is still in the field. Russ is actually still part of doing something on another perspective of correction. I won't go into too much detail with that. But he also obviously contributes a lot to Tier Talk. And we have Sergeant Larsen here, who entered the field at 48 years old. So let's go with Sergeant Larsen first. Sergeant, at 48 years old, what made you think that corrections was profession for you? Because most people would think that, hey, you know what, I'm not going to go ahead and this is a young man's job, this is a young woman's job. You know, what would make you think that at 48 this is something that you wanted to do and could do it?
I was in great shape. I changed really quick while with sponsors. I did not show up. I'm not the kind of guy that wears, this kind of shirt, elf shirt, and my pajama pants everywhere I go. I was not sloppy. I didn't look bad. Two things that I always talk about in all my videos are officer presence and reactionary gap. I knew I could do it because of my physical conditioning. I knew I could do it because of my dedication, my determination, and I had given most of my adult life to the profession. My daughter was in school. I looked around, and then kind of the deciding factor is the police department's paid about half of what the prison paid. And having kids and things, I decided I need to go to a job with more money. And I thought it would be very exciting and challenging. So I wanted to go in and show up like this. Forearms like Russ, biceps ready to go for a mud rider. So I figured I can do it. I've got experience. I've been around a lot of death, something we've talked about as a topic to deal with it later. I thought I'd seen everything. And I think when I got in my first week, actually, after completing the academy, I realized I had experienced and seen about 75% of prison life. So I was not shocked. That little 25%, I just learned and just took it with a grain of salt. So for me, it was easy. If you come in, pajama wearing, to Walmart with big, loose, baggy shirts, it's totally different at age 48. I was hired with people that did look like that, opposite of me.
Now, I remember being in the academy myself. There was an older gentleman there. He was in his 50s. His son was also, I believe, in the same academy. So that was actually pretty cool, believe it or not, that the father and son were kind of taking this journey together. But for me, I'll be honest with you, when I saw the older gentleman, I was concerned. I felt that, what happens if this person, has a heart attack or something like that. But the funny thing is, it was the younger people that couldn't pass the physicals. Like, I felt that this older gentleman that came in was very motivated. He was serious. He wasn't some young kid, not taking the profession serious as it should. This person was motivated. He knew what he was getting himself into, and he had prepared himself beforehand. So he was already ready to push himself to the limits. And this is something that I believe he wanted because his son was also doing it. So I think the motivation maybe for someone who does enter later in life may be a little bit more serious, and they could also be a little bit more committed. Because, again, I don't know what the purposes are for someone joining so late, but it could be because maybe they need a job. Maybe they have a family they got to support. Whatever it is, it may not be some young kid who's just testing the waters because they want to enter into somewhere else later on. But what's your thoughts, Russ? I mean, you came in at 25, but I'm sure you've worked with people that came in a lot older. I mean, do you see a difference in mentality? I mean, what was your mentality at 25? How serious was the job for you?
I think that at 25, the 25 that I was probably, a little bit green, untested, and, unproven. And I think that the job was good for me in that respect. And I think that, sometimes though, I really think that some of those older officers, as they first come in like that, if they, have a little bit of life experience behind them, a little bit of seasoning, a little bit of dealing with people, that they can be more effective than that younger officer, especially when that younger officer is confronting, lifers who, that are, 40, 45, 50, who have nothing to lose. And, they talk to some of these young skulls full of mush who are all about proving it, they're chesty at that age. And I think that, that they have a little bit more, what do you say, less rind on them. They're kind of, been used to life a little bit more, so they don't make some of those mistakes that the young guys make.
Well, I also want to talk about the mindset too. I mean, at 25, I really wanted a job, so this was always going to be a career for me. The moment I came in, the moment I did the academy, I wasn't going to uproot myself. I just wasn't. I got myself situated. I had some offers along the way while I was already in corrections, but I did stay in corrections. I love this profession, and I mean, obviously I must love it. I'm doing the stuff on the side. But my motivation was I am going to take this profession seriously. I saw this as a career, and I've moved up. I've been an officer sergeant. Now I'm on the administrative end. So I do think the mindset matters. But a lot of people will say one of the balances is that if you're new, like let's say usually the arguments are this: is 18 too young because they don't have life experience, but then is 48 too old because they just can't handle it physically. So there's got to be a middle ground there where you have that mature mindset, but also the physical capabilities to do it. Now, obviously, Larsen at 48 could do it. Russ could do it right now at, won't give out his age. He'll kill me and never come on the show again. But I almost did, Russ. I think I know it. I almost did.
I'm proud to say I'm 57 years old.
Oh, really? I was actually going to say 66, and I was going to say you look good. Think about it, Russ.
Really?
If I said you were 66, you look real good. You should lie about your age. It makes you look real good.
I'll just lie more often. How would that be?
I met Russ in person, by the way, and I'm only like 5'5", and Russ is like 6'4", 6'5", and it was very intimidating. So I could just imagine, like, if I was a prisoner having to deal with Russ. But I want to talk about the life experience aspect. So I'll start with Russ first, and then maybe Steve could also cut in on this. But what is it about life experience that, let's say, like at later in life, like late 30s, early 40s, that could play a pro if you want to become a working corrections, being 48 and, being able to collect certain things in life? How could that play out behind the wall?
Well, if you've done jobs and tasks and had some of that life experience, and you've actually maybe supervised or at least had to work alongside some of the younger guys, you've developed an ability to communicate, an ability to direct, an ability to, help them out along the way. And that can oftentimes translate directly into how you have to approach inmates, right? The thing that we talk about all the time, of course, is communication, right? And there's a lot of different ways of communicating. Sometimes we have to be about use of force, but most of the time what we have to be is about being able to get them on board with what we're putting out there. And a lot of times when we bring those brand new young bucks on board that feel that they need to always prove themselves, that, every chance is a chance to go hands-on, or every chance is a chance to, use language that's not necessary at that point in time, then they have a harder time, and it takes a while for them to acclimate. Whereas that older individual, I won't say it's all the time, because I've had some problems along the way supervising some older individuals, and we'll get into that in a minute. But I think that for the most part, it can be a pro, because those people already have some of those skill sets that they've developed with regards to communication and being able to work with that inmate population.
And you know what's great about what you're just saying actually right now is I've worked with a lot of, let's balance it first. There's a lot of young people right now that are mature in their mindset, whatever it is, but obviously there are some that want that excitement. That actually is probably why they're coming into this profession. That's the sad thing. Thank God we do have shows like this, channels like Chair Talk, Steve Larsen's channel, Beast Larsen, you know, the Keepers of Chaos, good communities that give the truth. Like, we don't really want to be balls to the wall every day. I mean, yes, we want to be alert, you know, whatever it is. I'm not saying that, but, you know, a good day really is a day where, you know, no one gets hurt, you know, on both sides, obviously. And the thing here is that, you know, when you have someone that is obviously older in life, they also, in my mind, have a little bit more patience. You know, inmates are going to push your buttons and they want that reaction. They want you to go ahead and swing first, because most of the time the cameras don't pick up sound. They just pick up action. And when you go to try to explain, well, the inmate threatened me, the inmate said this, the inmate said that, all they see is the aggressive action from the officer. So the inmate gets what they want, and eventually down the line they get a lawsuit that really winds up affecting our pay later on, because we're constantly getting sued and the state's constantly, you know, paying up on that. So I believe being older, entering the field in the profession, that level of patience is definitely something that I wish I had at the very beginning of my career. But what's your thoughts on life experience, Sarge?
I agree with what you're both saying, and I kind of would break it down into 3 words. You know, your mental experience, your emotional experience, and then physical would be the 3rd prong in this equation. Mental experience, that's your knowledge. And I do like hiring people late 30s and 40s, especially if they have teenagers. Having to raising teenagers to that point of life and pulling your hair out looking like this. I'm 53, but I do shave my head. I didn't pull it out. But having teenagers and coming into work at a prison, especially with lifers, that gives them a real big leg up, in my opinion. Emotionally, they've been through the highs and lows of life. You know, they've been through financial things. They've been through loss of family members, you know, grandparents and things. They just experienced those critical, never forget moments in life. The hang up with this is the physical part. If they have both of those, but they're totally out of shape, can't run a mud run, can't move across a monkey bar, can't do 5 push-ups, that's the part that you worry about. And you mentioned this earlier. How are they going to react when you get 2 or 3 young bucks that are ready to go? And I have to admit, you know, proudly with a smile, I was one of those balls to the wall every day. I went in ready to go. I mean, I was on the teams. I was ready for something. Something needed to happen every day. But you can't be out of shape, and you can't be, you know, wearing an Elf's t-shirt and pajamas to hang around me in a prison. And I make that point when I talk about officer presence. A part of your presence is who's the company with you. When you go to handle a problem, are they going to help you talk through it? Do they understand the good cop, bad cop routine? Or are they going to be an obstacle to you instead of a backup officer?
Well, you know, actually, me and Russ discussed this the other day on de-escalation, you know, techniques. Now, obviously, if you're able to employ it, I would always prefer communication over use of force, especially the first time I realized communication was essential was when I became a sergeant, and I was now responsible for 5 individuals going in and then the inmate. So obviously, you know, I wanted to see if we can get that dialogue as long as we could, as long as it was a safe and secured scene and we were able to work on de-escalation. But obviously, if you can't, yeah, balls to the walls, get the job done, point A to point B, and then we'll worry about the paperwork later. But the one thing that was key, though, obviously, is dealing with people that do have that level of patience. And obviously, for me, if they have that level of patience, I have a level of trust for them. I know that they're not going to jump the gun, because at the end, if they jump the gun, I got to worry about what that action is going to cause to other people. You know, if you get these younger guns that are just looking to, you know, challenge everything and just get ready to, you know, swing over the smallest of things, you know, now what happens here is most likely they're the ones that survive. It's the response team that winds up getting hurt, because again, they're coming in and, you know, this individual is kind of like, you know, I don't know, somehow it just never happened. This individual's good, you know, and the response team winds up getting hurt. And I have seen the response team, when they find out how it all started, go back to the young buck who jumped the gun and said, yo, really? Like, was that really what it was about? Because at the end of the day, is you're getting us all hurt because you can't control your emotion. And I would like to think someone that's that's later in life, that comes into the profession, has a little bit more control of self. And like Steve Larsen said 100%, is that they've been through stuff. They've been tested. They know how they react. Because in corrections, you get tested. You do. You're going to get tested every day. And you have to really know who you are to survive in this profession. I know we all would agree to that. And you don't want to find that out when shit hits the fan. Because at the end of the day, you're making us all vulnerable. The people right next to you, the facility itself. So I would like to think there's a certain age where, like, if I'm 48 and I decide to go into corrections, I've really thought this through. I'm 48 years old. I'm doing my research. I'm doing everything I can to say, is this a job for me? Can I do this? Can I, I know me at 48 years old. I know who I am. I know if I'm going to be able to go in and handle this job. I would like to think I know that. But again, there are going to be some people that are 48 and really just, they're not going to have the ability to do it because obviously their reasons could be wrong. But I think if the reasons are right. But Russ, outside of the mindset, I mean, as a supervisor, you want to control people that really do know who they are. They know how they react to situations. They bring a level of consistency to, how they are on their job, how they carry themselves. So obviously, do you think you would see that more with someone coming in to the profession later in life or someone that's coming into the profession at 18, 19 years old?
I think, everything else being equal, I think that you would get more of that from a little bit older of an officer. Someone that's, they don't have to have been around the block 10 times, but they have to have been around. They have to have established themselves at something else in life. And whether that's working at a bank or working in a lumber mill or whatever it is, like I said, everything else being equal, if they've established themselves, they'll have some of those skill sets, And also the other thing, if you've ever, looked around and you've supervised these different individuals, one thing that's very important is the way inmates react to people. And inmates react to a younger person who's telling them what to do. A lot of times they're more reactionary when it is a younger person, where when it's someone older that they feel, more on an equal par with, a lot of times it comes easier from that person for them to just, okay, boss, I'll go ahead, I'll do that, than it does from that younger cat. And that's just, a reactionary thing of the way we are as people, whether we're inmates or not.
It's funny. Someone asked me that a while ago about the respect. If you come in older, do you think the inmates respect you more as opposed to you coming in younger? I would like to think that really is how you carry yourself as well. I think that I've seen some young bucks that, go in, carry themselves correctly, and they just get that respect automatically because they show that there's zero tolerance, but they're objective, they're fair, they do the job. But I think for the most part, if it's that initial impression, I think if inmates are looking to, let's say, play somebody, unless that older person messes up and does something foolish where, a situation occurs and the inmates look at how how he's reacting or she's reacting and say, what, we can get this person. I think the initial impression of someone that's older is the inmates may see, well, what, maybe this person isn't new to the profession. Because that sometimes people, the guy's older, the inmates may make an assumption that maybe he came from another profession. They may not assume that he's new to corrections. Like, okay, maybe you're new to this facility, but you're not maybe new to the profession itself. So I think you're right. I think that initial impression of someone that's older may give that person a level of respect that would be different than someone that is younger. But if that older person does something foolish, that whatever they fail that test, the inmates are going to pounce on that individual. But what's your thoughts on that? Do you think, hey, Sarge, do you think that there is a different level of respect from the inmates if they initially, let's say you have someone coming in at the age of 48 and that initial first impression of a 48-year-old officer as opposed to the initial first impression of an 18 to 21-year-old officer?
Definitely. My first day after the academy in a dorm, I was put into a dorm that was all of one gang. And a part of initiation, they told this young guy to start a fight with me. So they had already decided this at breakfast, when I came in at 6 a.m. One of these guys trying to get in the gang was going to fight with me. I was new, I was older, I looked different. They didn't know anything about me. And it happened. My greatest video on my channel with the most views is called First Day as a Correction Officer. It's a great video, and I go in detail about this fight on my first day. And on the second day, the same gang tested me again. And I proved myself. They realized I came from somewhere. They just made a mistake of keep testing me until they figured it out. But I definitely carried myself different. I walked the walk. My wife's always told me, we've been married 25 years. I met her when I was a police and a SWAT guy. So she's always known this. She said, you walk like a cop. She's told me that 25 years now. You still walk like a cop. It doesn't matter what you do. Any job you have, you walk like a cop and you stare at people. How you present. I think as far as the age, in Kentucky, I had to be 21 to be a police officer. And that was so that people can have 3 years as a legal adult to make mistakes, hopefully not felony and bad mistakes, to prevent a job. But here they decided 21, and several states decide 21 is a good age. 3 years as an adult, see if you really want to stick with it. You know, you got out of high school and they pressure you. What do you want to do with your life? Where you're going? You pop off an answer. Yeah, I want to be a police officer. That sounds great. It's a great dream when you're 18. 3 years later at 21, if you have that same dream, then you're a lot more dedicated. That shows a lot more to them.
You know, you're bringing up something very good. I'll start with you, Sarge, if it's okay, but I think this is actually pretty interesting too. Okay, so we're giving the person that's younger and older a mindset. So we're only going by what they have going in, right? But you also have a developmental part of the profession. So like if I'm 21, I develop, you know, I start to get that mindset. I'm not really stuck in so many different routines that have become, you know, routine for me in life. I'm 21. I'm figuring out who I am. When you're 48, you may have already established that. I mean, if you don't have that mindset to work in corrections, is that something that you can learn at 48? Like you mentioned something great. You had that walk about you. You had these things about you. So going into corrections at 48 really wasn't that big of a shift because you had it. But what about someone that never worked in this profession? Maybe they think they could physically. Maybe they think they mentally they could, but it's 48. How do you get your mindset to shift from, you know, what you were doing prior? Let's say, like Russ said, many different jobs before, and now you're crossing into corrections, which is totally something different.
On my first day, I kind of went in probably with a total police mindset, which ended up, you know, had the inmate on the wall, hands and feet spread. I mean, I was patting down and controlling everything, and it was different. The way I searched people was different than the normal. And prison searches on the wall and a county jail are completely different. Prison guys search more thoroughly. The county jail tends to do this like straight up and down, like people are built like a pipe. The straight up and down, one leg, the other leg, hit the inseam, the crotch area, and you're done. It's just like this up and down hand movement. It's crazy. I come in and pat this guy down like the police, and it's almost, I had an inmate tell me, thanks for the massage. I said, no, I don't give massages. It's a thorough search without me getting injured and you getting injured. And he laughed. You know, that was an okay laugh. But I came in this way, the guy's on the wall, and one thing that I do when I'm talking, you'll notice, as a defensive tactics instructor, I use these words all the time in explaining. The guy's on the wall, I hit a Gerber slap, arm bar, put him on the ground, put him in a shoulder pin. I can talk that language because that's what I've done my whole life. And I talk it as I'm doing it. I use those words. It's like I'm narrating to a recording that's going to print it out for me on my use of force report. That's how I talk. But I came in with this mindset. I was ready, playing A, B, and C for the guy on the wall. I had to slow down to meet the needs of the prison. You know, and the warden told me several times, you're too mean to work in a prison. I'm like, what does that mean? You're just too mean.
See, right. So you came in. So you came in at 48 with the mindset because you've already been in law enforcement. You had experience. So I think that may be a lot different than someone coming in at 48 without ever having that level of experience. So Russ, what's your thoughts on that too? That's like someone that's coming at the age of 48 without ever having the background that the Sarge has here. I mean, what are some of the adjustments that they would have to make? Could they do it?
Well, I think that certainly they could. It's whether or not they will. When you start out in this profession, there's a whole host of skill sets that you have to develop, not the least of which is bearing, you know, the way you carry yourself, the way you're looking out, the way that you're ready to take charge in an emergency. You know, inmates see and feed off that stuff. There's a lot of officers out there of any age who just kind of go along with whatever the flow is. They're not that first salmon up the stream. They're not the first, bull out of the chute. And inmates see that too, and they know who they can target to manipulate or get away with things. And so, it really becomes a matter of how much you want to train yourself and how good your trainers are in there in order to develop the skills that you're going to need. The middle pack of corrections, or probably any other law enforcement entity, is huge. Then there's some bottom dwellers that are just, worthless. And then you have, your top echelon cream of the crop that are doing a lot better. Your progression should be from the bottom to the top if you're about anything. And if you really want to get in there, get your hands dirty and try and, figure out all of the skill sets that you need. Everything from the way you carry yourself, to your physical abilities, to your mental sharpness, to being able to identify gangs and body language, and all of those other physical skill sets. So, you know what? Some of these guys that are at, 30, 40, 50 or whatever it is, have the ability to do that, and some of them don't. And I've worked with some of the ones that do, and I've worked with some of the ones that don't. I have some, bad stories about some of the ones that don't. So it's just all, it's an individual thing. But like we've pointed out before, it's nice to have something to look backward from an individual to see what they have established, what they have accomplished in their life and in their person and in their character, to see whether or not, that history means something. Some people, no matter what age they are, they have no real history.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, again, ideally, we're talking about individuals that are coming to the profession that are motivated, again, a later age, for whatever reason the motivation is. It gives them a reason to take the job seriously, that are able to do it physically. We talked about that. And when I say mindset, I'm talking about a mature mindset. Now, obviously, there are some caveats to that, like we just mentioned right now, like, okay, you have a mature mindset, that's great. So at that level, okay, they would fit in this profession, okay. But then there's other stuff that are the surprises of this profession and, that are a little bit different than the outside world. And can you adjust to that, that much later in life? I think as maybe, it's not something you get used to, don't get me wrong, because I've been in this profession for over 18, 19 years now, and I still get shocked over stuff that happened every day. But I also am comfortable with how I react to that. I may be shocked. Sometimes I may even have a level of fear, but I know exactly that I'm going to still push forward. I haven't really ever been to a point where I haven't pushed myself forward, but doesn't mean I don't feel certain things. It doesn't mean I'm not afraid at certain times or that I'm actually shocked by what's going on. I don't have a chance to process it at that moment. I will process it, just not at that moment. But it's great to know that, as I said, for people that decide to get in the field a little bit later and outside of the retirement, obviously, if you're going to come in this field, you do want to get that amount of time in, you want to complete that pension and you want to get that retirement. So the benefit is coming in early, you get to retire early, you get to get your pension and go. Coming in late, you're going to work all the way to that last, 65 or whatever it is, because you may not be able to complete that time to get to the pension. But for those that are, again, coming into the profession a little bit later, there are the pros and cons, but I think the big part of it is outside the fact that you have to know why you need to come in, that's a great motivator. This is corrections. This is a prison. What can you honestly be willing to take in? Because as I said, I mean, if you're not used to having someone at this point, yell at you, curse at you, try to kill you, try to assault you, spit at you, and you don't know how you're going to react to that. That's another thing. As we talk and just more discussions come, if that 48-year-old goes into the academy, like now for me, academies, they don't really change who you are, but they do build you up. They get you to a consistent foundation. So somewhere you do have to look at yourself and then build that consistency. Now, as a young boot, maybe that's great because you have a lot that you can work with. I haven't really established who I am at 21, 22, 23. So I'm kind of a little bit more of a blank slate. But when you're 48, 49 years old and the academy is trying to help you get rid of these old habits that you may have that could be a threat if you get the job, could that be a problem? What's your thoughts on that, Sarge, for academy instructors who are working with these older individuals that may have set ways that, hey, I'll give you another example. This is crazy too. When I was in the academy, I noticed that a lot of people that had backgrounds in the military were failing the range because the department needed them to shoot a certain way, but they were so accustomed to shooting the way the military was. And that wasn't the way, that's not the standards for the way the academy was. So now just kind of thinking on that level, if you get stuck into your certain ways and you're 48 years old, and these are lifetime habits, that you develop through time, is it harder for the academy to try to get rid of those bad habits at 48 and introduce better habits?
I'd say yes. We had a couple older guys in my academy class that had no experience. So we were different. They stopped asking me questions. They didn't want me to participate in discussions because I kept doing the cop talk stuff to them. Hey, you got to do this, you got to do that. I want to talk about use of force real quick and explain the why. And they didn't want to hear that. Then the other older guys come in, and they were decent health, good mind, body, and spirit, had good emotional stuff. And they just didn't seem to grasp the danger of it. Couldn't fathom inmate might throw a shampoo bottle full of week-old feces in their face. That stuff just seemed to be shocking to them. No, that doesn't happen. I watch TV and it's not like that. So it was hard to get that convinced to them. There is a bad and the ugly side. They just saw the good side of this. And to them, the good side meant get enough years in, get a retirement. A lot of people got the job so they can have medical benefits. That was a big thing. Get a job in uniform so you don't have to buy clothes. I've been in uniform my whole life. I've had one job that I've actually had to buy my own clothes, and I'm 53 years old. So to people, medical insurance and uniform was a free thing. Hey, I get free boots. That's great. Now I can spend money on whatever I want to. With the point you mentioned right before you went to me, people have to receive this information and be open to it. We talk about children being sponges. Sometimes adults can be sponges if they're enthusiastic about it. But the key element is the recruiting and training. And they need to be the same people. I did a lot of recruiting and training. And you've got to have a training team. It can't just be, one of us doing it. It has to be a team. And your FTO program, if you have one at the prison, has to be people that do more than just put a pin on over their name tag so they can have some bling on their shirt. Everybody wants bling. People don't want to do the job. The FTOs have to go from building to building. They have to be assigned. They have to work. And that's where your success is. You can take the 18, 19-year-old kid and the 50-year-old man or woman. If you have a good training section in FTOs, they'll be a success. If your training department, like we ran into a lot of problems, we did not have success. And I think if I had a different background and came in, I may not have stayed. If I came in off the street, first time to wear a uniform and a badge, not even sure how to iron creases, how to fold my state patch up here and iron it up and get my pants without burning a hole in them because your iron's too hot. If you don't know all that and you're 48, 50 years old, you're going to get frustrated really quick.
Yeah, Russ, obviously I agree with Sarge the whole way. I mean, I can't imagine, entering this field that late in life and then all of a sudden having to worry about how I iron my shirt every day. And, because you're not used, maybe I had jobs that maybe I was a construction worker. I don't know. And now, there's a lot more that's expected of you when you walk inside that facility. But Russ, I want to ask you the same question as well, you supervised people that were older, and you supervised people that were younger. And I know you're very, the way you supervise is you're also very constructive. So you look to teach people, right? You look to develop them. Do you think it would be harder to develop someone that's 48 as opposed to 21 if both parties were, receptive to the information you were provided? So, I'm 21, I want to learn, and I'm 48 and I want to learn. I mean, who do you think would be able to really get a hold of that information and run with it?
I think there's a lot to be said for just being receptive to it. If you're receptive to it and you want to come to me and, hear some of what I have to tell you, hear some of what my experience has to say, you're going to be able to take that and develop it in your own way. I've had guys that were young and just thought that they already knew how to do the whole job and stuff because they could go out there and read their post orders, and they think that that's all there is to it. But they weren't able to affect the kind of drastic, safety improvements on a day-to-day basis that I could. But it's kind of the same thing with the older set too. Some of the older set, they just never seem to adapt or want to adapt, or I'm not sure what the best way to put this is. They don't seem to be able to understand the situation that they're in on a day-to-day basis. I had one individual who was older one day, and he was up in the tower, and I was the sergeant on the ground, and I had a fence. There was a fence between me, excuse me, and a couple of my officers. And all of a sudden, I heard one of my officers say something to me, and I turned around, and he had a hold of this guy, and the guy was bleeding pretty good. And my officer, had his hands full. I couldn't get to him immediately because there was no place in the fence for me to go through. And so I was getting ready to talk to my officer up there in the tower, and I said, "Hey, go ahead and put the yard down, and I need response, here in front of the unit office where we were at." And he got back on the radio and said, "Well, who is this?" And "Does it matter who I am?" I said, "Go ahead, put the yard down now." And he got on there again. He said, "Who is this?" And I said, "Any building, put the yard down right now." And, he just couldn't get through his head that there was an emergency. And no matter what that emergency was, if an inmate got a hold of that radio, it's still a good time to put the yard down. And, he just never could quite come to grasps with what a prison is like and what you have to do in each and every emergency. He thought things, should follow a precise, exact course. And if he wasn't in on what that circle was, then he didn't want to react to it. So, you know what? I think there's both sides, pros, there's cons. I think overall it's pro, but sometimes you get some people that just really aren't cut out to handle it. And they've tried to get it, not that they're too late in life to do this, but they just never were going to be ready to accept that responsibility.
Before we come to a close, so basically we had the mindset going in. Could they be developed? We talked about the physical, the motivation. Again, the motivation should be internal, not external. I mean, if you're coming into the profession because you want good benefits or you want a decent pay, that's not going to be enough to carry you over. The motivation has to be some internal why that will get you through the rocky times. And the other thing we talked about definitely is just, the respect that they can get from the inmate population. And again, we had to do the comparison between the older individuals that come in to the younger, because that's the only way you're going to have an argument here is, and I do believe there are some pros and cons, but ultimately this is not we're not stereotyping. This is really, people could surprise you. Everything we talked about right now, you could have one person that's 21 or 18 that's very mature and it's better than our older officers. Then you could have an older officer that's very immature, that just doesn't fit the picture that we try to paint across here. But in the end, I think what we did was we tried to answer a question that was presented on Keepers of Chaos. And again, it wasn't scripted. And I believe that we went into some very good dialogue that we didn't know we were headed. It just happens. Hey, Sarge, you got anything you want to say in closing?
Oh, thank you for inviting me. Hopefully I get to be a part of more discussions. I enjoy this kind of talk and this work, and it's a passion. It's over 30 years I've been involved with uniforms and badges. It's a way of life, and it doesn't leave you. That's why I do the training on my channel, Sergeant Steve Larsen, to help improve people.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you something. I've been watching your channel for quite some time now. I do enjoy it. I think there's a lot of good information. Definitely the videos, especially when you break stuff down, there's a lot to learn from that. And I know our audience would love that if they get a chance to check it out. Don't forget, guys, Sergeant Steve Larsen. And then, yes, of course, we're going to have you on again. There's a lot of topics that I feel definitely we could definitely have you back on for. And, hey, Russ, what's your thoughts, Russ, in closing? What do you want to tell everybody, Russ?
I want to tell everyone out there, that, not all of our audience is necessarily, corrections oriented. There's a lot of people out there that watch us and haven't, had anything to do with prisons. There's some of you out there that have never thought about necessarily working the custody aspect, or the sworn officer aspect of prisons, but maybe you're flirting with that idea, and it's something for you to consider. I love training anyone and everyone, young or old alike. So if you're thinking about getting into it, it is worth thinking about. It's worth exploring. And as always, over at Keepers of Chaos, if you're in any way involved in corrections, if you're working for any kind of a correctional outfit, you are welcome there. And over on Tier Talk, of course, we have lots and lots of content, videos, history, training to help you make that decision if you're thinking that this might be for you.
Yeah, guys, again, another great dialogue here. Don't forget, guys, soon I'll have that book on the market. We have a few more chapters left. Got in touch with an editor. And then we also believe Russ will have a book eventually on the market soon, too. And then hopefully we get to use the same editor. Again, it's real quick books, probably 100, 110 pages, but just something to have out there that I believe is evergreen. I believe the stuff that we're going to be teaching in this book, it could last. It really does, because it's dealing with human behavior. And believe it or not, we're a lot more consistent than people think. And inmates know that. That's the scary thing. All right, as always, guys, the show is Tier Talk. If you haven't, please subscribe, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. Bell's going to notify you every time I post a video. Stay safe.